I think most of us would look forward to the end of ISIS, especially with the reign of terror that they have, reaped upon the world in general and as a whole. But I think there's a couple of prophetic scenarios that we need to consider if ISIS was actually to be taken out of the picture. Now, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger recently brought up to President Trump that if ISIS goes, there could be a power vacuum. And of course, we know that nature abhors a vacuum. And what that means is that somebody else would be there to fill the power. Now, the two most common and leading scenarios would be one would be Iran. Iran would be the one I think might be the leading scenario to Henry Kissinger and much of the world, because they're right now already on the ground fighting and trying to regain a foothold to places that they've lost, and they continue to make their way, and they're doing a pretty good job without a lot of help, actually. Now, in terms of prophecy, though, what we have to consider is that Iran will play a big part in the future. Iran, formerly known as Persia and Elam in ancient times, does actually have a fairly prominent role coming up here very soon. In fact, in Isaiah 21 and verse 2, it shows Iran working with Russia to take down a future Babylonian empire. Now, this shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to those of us who are historians, because the Medo-Persian Empire was ostensibly the same exact thing. It was Russia and Iran working together to take down the Babylonian Empire. Also, in the future, we can look towards Iran actually taking into captivity some of God's people. Isaiah, I think it's 11:11, talks about them actually having to come out of Iran, or out of Elam, as it is in the New King James Version. Now, what's my point? The point is that Iran is going to have to become more of a power than it has been in the past. Well, now thanks to the fact that the U.S. has lifted sanctions that it's had on Iran for 37 years, as well as fed them money, and maybe even more so than most of us realize, Iran is now starting to stretch its legs and to become more of a power to contend with, even to the point where now they're even taunting us. So that was point number one, is the possibility of Iran filling those shoes. Now, point number two that Kissinger brings up is that possibly a confederacy of other Middle Eastern nations coming together and to fill that void. Of course, Saudi Arabia, one of the leading nations there, and also a Sunni nation, would love to fill the void that ISIS, which is also Sunni, is leaving, so that Iran, which is mostly Shia, would not get in. Well, this also falls into line with prophecy. In Psalm 83, we find a list of nations that will come against God's people, and this is still a confederacy that's still to come together, and it's composed of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Germany, and others. Now, of course, they go by their ancient names, and we also have a table of nations on the website that actually shows who the nations were back then and who they are today. You always can go to the website and do a search on Table of Nations and find that out. But the point being that if ISIS is removed, then this is scenario number two, which also feeds into end-time prophecy. So again, what we see is that when we get rid of one, all right, that just because the enemy of our enemy takes their place doesn't mean necessarily that they are our friend. And what we are definitely seeing in a scenario like this, if either one of these happen, could very well be pointing to signs of the times.